process of, learning to play your own way is where you study people you really admire, and you kind of really absorb that in. Yeah, I'm certainly not as fast. I mean, a lot of people play tons faster than me. Because I was like, no, the studios where you experiment, and it's a laboratory, and you sit there and you do this part, and then you add on that, and you overdub on that, which is true. I mean, it is, but if you take that out of context, which I started to do, then you just like put your feet, just, like connecting the dots. I think it's probably like Scotty Moore with Elvis Presley. When I heard him, like when I was like 3 years old, and I heard Scotty Moore playing all this cool stuff, I really thought he had a lot to do with how Elvis sounded so great, when he first came out. And the sound of it really just kind of appealed to me. He just did a lot of like Merle Travis stuff. He did a lot of stuff like that where he was just playing just... rockabilly, hillbilly, kind of bluesy, though, kind of stuff. It's like a Clapton kind of thing. It's kind of like a spoonful or something. I would just sit and just listen to the records and just, and kind of really study, how he, like he would do like... Just the way he played it, like... He had that kind of that... And just kind of would, if you listen to it long enough where you just... get kind of that, it's kind of like the inflection of the way somebody plays. And I think one of the kind of the process of, learning to play your own way is where you study people you really admire, and you kind of really absorb that in. And even if you go through a stage where you copy them note for note, I mean, that's not necessarily a good place to end up, but if you take that and you do that with 7 or 8 people that you really admire, and then you start picking and choosing, and then you start, the step 2 that comes later, you start creating your own style. Learn all the notes on all the strings, on all the frets. Not just learn them, but assimilate it to where you can look at any fret and you just automatically, instantaneously know what note it is. Just look there. That's kind of, I think it's an important springboard towards becoming what somebody would say is musically free. There's a concentricness to where you pick and where you fret. If not, then, it'll just end up being kind of sloppy or something, and then just kind of, practicing it. Getting that coordination where you're just in sync with yourself, and then you start off slow and then, build it up if you want to. Like if I was just to... You can kind of feel it when the 2 sides are like in harmony, kind of in the same, almost like they're in phase with each other or something. But yeah, I'm certainly not as fast. I mean, a lot of people play tons faster than me. I've heard blistering people that I think they do the picking technique, where it's back and forth, and really got that down really well. I kind of pick more. I like to pick kind of up on the guitar, like instead of picking like, I might pick like when I'm going up. Which is kind of the same as when I'm like playing with the fingers in pick, where it's... And that's really composition and the playing, and then you got to figure out a way to have the guitar put inside there without sacrificing the song. That's very difficult. And when I listen to a lot of my live tapes, I think sometimes I do kind of cross that line where the song gets sacrificed because I'm too busy entertaining myself, I think it's to have the maturity to know where you can really push and try to go for that virtuosic type playing, but knowing the maturity of when to do it, when to not to do it, and how much the song can take. A lot of the late 50s and early 60s Miles Davis records, you know, they're really hip. I'm trying to learn more about that, where I can, you know, learn more of the chord stuff, you know. That kind of stuff, you know. When I go home at the end of the day and I put on this Miles Davis record, and I go, man, how can you get this to have that same kind of quality? You know, no matter what kind of music you play, but that same kind of tonality quality, you know, and that's what is interesting live, you know, and so if you ascribe to that kind of concept too much, I think that it can kind of lead you down a wrong path. I think it kind of got me all kind of screwed up, because I was like, no, the studio's where you experiment, and it's a laboratory, and you sit there and you do this part, and then you add on that, and you overdub on that, which is true. I mean, it is, but if you take that out of context, which I started to do, then you just like put your piece, you know, like connecting the dots, you know, instead of painting a picture. And so I really think that, you know, in a way that the live and the studio should be exactly the same, except for the fact that one has the embellishment of that reciprocity from the crowd, and the other has that embellishment of you can add little extra brush strokes to what you created. But the fundamental thing, I think, in the best situation would be a immediacy and an actualization of what you're playing. You know, just, you know, actualize that in the moment. Trying to get a little bit, as far as technically, I'm trying to learn to get where I'm feeling that, if you talk to violin players, they talk about the sweet spot where it's really important that their finger connects with the string just right. It makes a world of difference, because you're dealing with an acoustic thing. And so there is really kind of a sweet spot on the guitar too, the way your finger hits the string and the way you pick, you know, I'm trying to zero in on to get that a little cleaner, and at the same time learn on the scales, you know, and be able to play through chord changes, you know. Instead of just sit there and like play out of one scale, you know, try to kind of work it all together or something. That's kind of what I'm working on now. It's just kind of become a household thing at this point, I guess. Everybody seems to play, so. I knew that when I was on some flight on an airline, and you know, the magazines are in the front of it, and you know, oh, and there's a Stratocaster on the front of the airplane, like American Airlines, and it says 40th anniversary of the Fender Stratocaster. I thought, man, things have changed. I mean, it used to be like that was like an esoteric thing. You played a guitar and people didn't even know what they looked like. You know, now it's like almost everybody has one in their house at some point. I wonder if it'll change. You know, in the 50s it was the sax, or the 40s it was the saxophone. It enjoyed the same kind of attention that the guitar did in the 60s and on to now. So who knows? Maybe it'll be something different in the future. I don't know. Or maybe somebody will come along like Jimi Hendrix and totally turn around our concept of how it should be played.